Alright, so now that I've logged weeks and weeks and weeks of basically posting, these are like notes of, I researched this hijacking kind of shit, but I also use anything for notes. So the voyeur method of commitment to a psychiatric facility. Okay, so this is where. See, I found these psychologists that were trying to like diligently push towards essentially waltzing in and just putting like and grabbing somebody and throwing them into a psych unit based on online voyeur stalker that I call ghost voyeuring, where they where where they wanted the government. Well, this is like what they were trying to do during Donald Trump. They're trying to get the government to sign off on a method that essentially operates around exposing satanic S&M cover-ups. Basically, that's the broad reason. But if they start talking about what the cops are doing in drug metros through S&Ms and shit, stuff like that, see, they wanted the ability of like of basically justifying like committing people against their will by voyeuring them in secret without any. Yeah, see, I went and I went and researched the very simple understanding of all this, what a psychiatric evaluation is. A doctor or mental health professional talks to you about your symptoms, thoughts, feelings, and behavior patterns. You may be asked to fill out a questionnaire to help answer these questions. And see, I like to make huge mockeries of them because in ghost voyeuring, they never talk to somebody. Okay, ever. So the reality is that that is part of the medical practice of a psychological evaluation is to have a face-to-face talk with the person. And that the reality is that the stuff, I mean, essentially it's like to be able to do that, what is forced commitment to a psychiatric facility, they have to be able to prove in a court of law the person being a danger to either themselves or another person, essentially. And that is where the ability of proving in a court of law based on what would be illegally obtained voyeur footage. And that then the other aspect is a police department isn't supposed to be the crime does not fall into medical like psychology. So a police force isn't really ethically able to justify doing investigations based on mental health. Now, if they're being a danger to themselves, then that pretty much takes out any ability for what the police officers would even be able to help with. It becomes a like the Britney Spears where they need to have some sort of person that makes decisions for them kind of stuff in a civil kind of court of law, like a custody, a conservatorship. And that is where that stuff operates outside of the realm of law enforcement. If they're being a danger to others, then essentially they have to legally obtain evidence of that can be presented in a court. There's not really necessary if they're an actively in, it becomes it becomes something where if they're actively being dangerous to somebody else, there's probably a crime that they can be arrested for. Whether it be stalking or harassment and stuff like that. That's the kind of stuff that, depending on when it comes to psychological evaluations, see, I mean, if they're just pissed off at some chick or something, like, you can't necessarily justify committing them to a psychiatric facility for that, because you know, crimes of passion type of ideas don't actually fall into what commitment to a psychiatric facility would even be for. See, essentially the conservatorship would probably be the actual way of doing that stuff, of committing somebody to a psychiatric facility. See, potentially you can get a judge without a conservatorship to be going in through the steps towards that, and that if they seem to be off psychiatrically to the point where a conservatorship would be needed, that's essentially where that's like where they, if they have like massive schizophrenia and they start like cutting themselves or some shit like that, okay? So that would be the kind of stuff that you would need to be able to prove that in a court of law with legally obtained evidence. See, you can't violate people's civil rights. And so then this is like where I just found these people doing this stuff and trying to push for this idea, and I'm a genius. When I find S&M clubbers that won't admit it or something doing this type of stuff, essentially the way that I view the people that they were focusing on, they're victims. More than likely. They know how to derange victims into becoming crazy people and stuff, okay? They know how to do that. It's pretty typical in an S&M to be deranging your victims and shit, and then for them to be kind of psycho-y after a while, okay? Because they go through years of psychological abuse in the forms of gaslighting and ridicule and the ideas of chasing the prairie tree. That's where they think that they're about to be finally done with something, and then everybody just bombards and laughs at them and breaks them down psychologically. That shit is where a lot of their victims get put through that stuff. And so this is where, they'll have, when it comes to some of the psychos that they're looking for, more than likely, those people would have been a victim at first. Even the tech psychos. They would have been a victim at first. And then, since everybody's like a sociopath Satanist, basically, they like to take their victims and they like to see how psycho and Satan-y they can make them. And so, the group that was pushing for this type of shit, see, I already knew what system they were discussing that stuff in. It was a Nazi S&M psychotic doctor system, basically. Okay, so the people that are in that are Nazi S&M psychotic people that are doctors. So I already knew what those people were already just by the discussion system they were using. See, that is where to even be a part of what it's like to even be in the discussion systems that they were using on those dark webs, they would have to be a psychotic Satanist. Essentially. And so, I knew that. But whether there's proof, they'll probably be like, where's the proof? Where's the proof? And so that is where I don't dig into people's lives, but they do tend to broadcast that stuff, and then what they may not realize is that there's some people in the world that know exactly who discusses in those dark webs like that. Oh yeah, they always act normal and rational and stuff. But see, they're in satanic S&M. And most people in satanic S&M, some come from like a Nazi S&M in the past or something. And that those people know about the intellectualism shit. And I can tell that they used to be, they would have been in a Nazi S&M discussion system. And that when I was reviewing through some of these satanic S&Ms during my research, I could tell the people that came from Nazi S&M, because what you may not realize is that most of the time in a satanic S&M, everybody is usually being dumb when it comes to intellectualism. And that a lot of the times when those start to fill up with people that are doing actual intellectualism, usually it's because they get all pissy and whiny about not being a part of, like, see, the Nazi S&M intellectualism that they would have probably been in has some of the smartest people in that Nazi kind of world. And they probably wouldn't have been smart enough. They probably would have just been like really whiny and bitchy about it. And then they would have found these more modern tech, satanic S&M tech clubs. And then they would have noticed nerds farting around and military guys being douchey and stuff. And then they would have started instituting a smart, so to speak. And then, since they would have been like the only ones that would know how to do that, then they would have been hijacking, in ways, the discussion stuff. And so, that is kind of where, like, you can tell, right? And then they usually utilize the NAZIPEDO cuck, like, it's like a Merc discussion, but I mean, it utilizes video and stuff like that. But I mean, it's the same idea as like the administrator over a Merc discussion, where the NAZIPEDO cuck method is to get people to think that they're going to be the intellectual at the top, and then for some psycho to be like, no. Basically. And so, that is where, when I found them trying to patty wagon people from a fucking computer without ever talking to them, that's where they're trying to make this. The cops attempt to do this too, where anybody that fucking talks about it, they want to be able to just walk in and fucking arrest and shit. And it's like a similar idea. It's a similar idea. One of the things that most of those people in those dark webs suffer from is they think that people give a fuck about what their opinion is. So when they think that their satanic S&M fucking club, like, secrets, like, matter, a lot of times they'll think that the federal government will bend over backwards to keep their little fucking secrets secret. Raping women and shit and killing children and shit, that stuff. They think the government will secretly protect their right to their religion. A lot of times, the satanic S&M, those people, they get a whole series of reinforced fucking dumbness, okay? They just do. Most of the time, most of the effort of satanic S&M is put it to scrubbing the internet of videos like this.